Have you ever placed your hand over your heart in a quiet moment? Maybe after climbing the stairs, or just lying awake in the early hours of the morning, and wondered, what is this heart carrying that I no longer speak of out loud? They say the heart is just a muscle, tissue, valves, chambers, and rhythm. But if that's true, why does it ache when we grieve? Why does it flutter when someone we love enters the room? Why does it feel heavy on days when we can't find the words to describe our sadness? As we grow older, we begin to realize something profound. The heart doesn't just pump blood, it remembers. It stores the unsaid, the unreleased, the moments we thought had passed, but linger still. And this changes the way it beats. Some say, that's just age, it's normal, and maybe it is. But Buddhism invites us to look deeper, to see aging not as decline, but as deepening, to understand the body, including this heart, not as something separate from our spirit, but as a mirror of it. From the Buddhist perspective, the heart is far more than an organ. It is the seat of compassion, of presence, of our truest self. And when our lives begin to quiet down, when the house gets still, when the rush is gone, when the roles we once played begin to fade, we are finally able to hear the language of the heart again. Sometimes it speaks through a skipped beat or a restless night. Other times, through a surprising moment of peace while watching the birds or hearing a child's laughter from far off. Our aging hearts are not failing us. They are speaking to us, softly, honestly, patiently. They are asking to be understood in a new way. So today, let's listen. Let's explore together why aging hearts beat differently, not just medically, but spiritually. Not just because of plaque or pressure, but because of the invisible weight they've carried and the quiet wisdom they've stored. Because what if your heart isn't weakening, but awakening? Let us begin, and we'll start, not in a doctor's office, but where all inner healing begins, with how we see and what we cling to. 1. The heart as more than a muscle. A Buddhist reframing to most doctors, the heart is a beautifully efficient machine, one that pumps, expands, contracts, and keeps us alive with its rhythmic beat. It's measured by numbers, pulse, blood pressure, cholesterol levels. But if we stop there, if we reduce it to a mechanical rhythm, we miss the truth that ancient Buddhist teachings have long understood. The heart isn't just an organ, it's the temple of our emotional life. In Buddhism, the heart, or citta in Pali, is not only where we feel, it's where our consciousness rests. It is the seat of compassion, karusa, loving kindness, metta, joy, mudita, and equanimity, upekkha. And when these qualities are nurtured, the heart becomes not something that wears out with time, but something that opens. Let me share with you a story, one that might feel familiar. There was a woman named Carol. She was 76 when she first began experiencing strange flutters in her chest. Not pain exactly, but a kind of anxious buzzing that came out of nowhere. The doctors found nothing structurally wrong. Her heart was aging, yes, but within the normal range. But Carol didn't feel normal. Her sleep grew restless. She felt tightness during quiet evenings, when the house would go still. And it was then, during one of those lonely nights, sitting by the window watching the moon, that she realized her heart wasn't breaking down. It was trying to be heard. You see, Carol had spent her life taking care of others, children, a sick husband, her aging parents. She'd never really asked herself how she felt. Her heart had been a soldier, beating through grief, through loss, through years of holding it together. And now that her life was finally quiet, her heart was no longer fighting. It was remembering. Buddhism teaches us to treat this remembering not as a problem but as a doorway. The Buddha said, As a lotus flower is born in water, grows in water, and rises out of water to stand above it unsoiled, so I was born in the world, grew up in the world, and yet I have overcome the world. In other words, our heart may be shaped by this life, by its storms and sorrows, but it does not have to be hardened by them. With awareness, it can rise above. Carol began a simple meditation practice. She would sit, hand over heart, breathing deeply, and whisper to herself, "I hear you now." That one sentence, that simple act of attention, began to ease her flutters more than any medication had. And here's the lesson for us: when we reframe the heart, not as a mechanical tool, but as a vessel of memory, of grief, of love, we don't just heal the body, we begin to heal the self. So maybe the ache in your chest isn't a sign of weakness. Maybe it's a knock at the door of your awareness, asking gently, "Will you finally listen to me?" Let's move next to what your heart may be quietly carrying and why it begins to speak more loudly with age. 2. What the aging heart carries: grief, memory, and unspoken longing. As we grow older, we often notice our bodies changing. Slower steps, stiffer joints, a heart that beats differently than it once did. But underneath those physical shifts is something more subtle, more tender, the quiet weight our heart has carried, often without our permission, often without our awareness. You see, the aging heart doesn't just slow down, it remembers. In Buddhist thought, everything that arises in the mind, every thought, every feeling, leaves an impression. These impressions, or sankharas, accumulate over time. And though we may forget the exact faces, the exact words, the exact nights we cried into our pillows, the heart does not forget. It stores not as memory, but as mood, as breathlessness, as sudden tears, as silence that stretches too long. Let's take a moment to reflect on this through the story of Frank, an 82-year-old retired carpenter who lived alone in the same little house where he'd once raised a family. Frank was not a man of many words. He built things with his hands, and when his wife passed 5 years prior, he simply carried on, as he said. But something shifted on his birthday. That morning his daughter called, a short, cheerful call. His grandson sent a card. Yet when the house fell back into its hush, Frank felt a strange tightness in his chest, not medical, but emotional. He sat in his workshop staring at his old hammer, remembering how he'd built a treehouse with his son decades ago. And then he cried, not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, his shoulders shaking. And in that moment, Frank understood. His heart wasn't reacting to a phone call or a memory. It was mourning the years, mourning all he had built and all he had lost. In Buddhist practice, grief is not a detour from the path. It is the path. As Thich Nhat Hanh once said, "The tears I shed yesterday have become rain. The rain has fallen on the earth and helped the flowers to bloom." The grief we carry is not wasted. It softens us, it opens us. But only if we stop pretending we're fine. Only if we sit with it, breathe with it, and let it teach us. Frank eventually joined a small meditation group at the local community center. At first he thought it was nonsense, but one of the instructors, an elderly woman named Sumi, told him, "Sometimes the only thing your heart wants is for you to sit beside it and not turn away." That one sentence changed him. So many older adults, perhaps like you, have grown up in times when emotions weren't something to talk about. Strength meant silence. But here's the truth: strength that ignores pain becomes stone, and stone cannot beat, stone cannot feel. But the human heart, it must feel, it must pulse with sorrow, with love, with longing. Especially in our later years, when we have finally slowed down enough to hear what it's saying. If your heart feels heavier now than it did in your youth, don't be afraid. It's not failing. It's opening. Opening to all that was unspoken, all that was endured, all that was deeply loved and deeply missed. And what a sacred thing that is. Let's move now to how the wisdom of the Buddha teaches us to tend to that heart with presence, not to erase its ache, but to soften it, soothe it, and perhaps even begin to let it bloom again. 3. The medicine of mindfulness. How breath calms a tired heart. There comes a moment in many older adults' lives when even the simplest things, getting out of bed, making a cup of tea, walking to the mailbox, feel heavier, slower, or just harder to care about. And yet, strangely enough, the heart never stops working. Whether we feel alive or lost, it keeps beating, steady, faithful, silent, but not untouched. In Buddhist philosophy, there's a sacred understanding: when the mind returns to the breath, the heart returns to the body. That is to say, our breath is not just a bodily function, it's a bridge, a thread between our mind, our heart, and this very moment. And for a heart that has weathered decades of joy, sorrow, confusion, and endurance, that thread can become a lifeline. Let's talk about Margaret, a 77-year-old grandmother who once said, "I'm not anxious, I'm just tired all the time." But when she began learning basic mindfulness techniques in a seniors wellness class, something surprising happened. In her words, "It wasn't that the pain went away, but for the first time, I noticed how tightly I'd been holding everything: my jaw, my breath, my shoulders, my thoughts. It was like my whole body had been bracing for something that never came." Margaret learned to pause, just for a few moments, before her morning coffee, before reading the newspaper, before responding to a difficult memory. She'd sit, gently close her eyes, and focus on 3 slow, deliberate breaths. No forcing, no fixing, just noticing. And in those quiet moments, something in her began to shift. This is the medicine of mindfulness, not a cure, not a miracle, but a returning to the self we left behind somewhere between duty and distraction. In Buddhism, mindfulness sati means more than just awareness. It means remembering to return, again and again, to now, to breath, to life. One Buddhist monk once described anxiety as the child inside you that just wants to be held. And what is the breath, if not an embrace we offer ourselves 100 times a day? Science now echoes this ancient truth. Studies show that mindfulness and conscious breathing lower blood pressure, reduce cortisol, and improve heart rate variability, all key indicators of cardiovascular health. But beyond the science, there's something even more precious. Mindfulness brings back the feeling of being alive, and that is something many people, especially in their older years, quietly lose without realizing it. So if you find yourself drifting into worry, into grief, into numbness, come back to your breath, not to escape, not to achieve, but to remember you are still here. And this moment, however small, however quiet, is sacred. Breathe in, gently. Breathe out, kindly. This is how the heart learns to rest, not only in the body but in the world again. Next, we'll explore how emotional forgiveness for ourselves and for others brings ease not just to the soul, but also to the very rhythm of our aging hearts. 4. Forgiveness as heart medicine, releasing what we carry. Have you ever noticed how some memories still weigh heavy, even after decades have passed? A harsh word from a loved one, a betrayal that cut deeper than it showed, a regret that returns when the world grows quiet. We may think we've moved on, but the heart remembers. And the truth is, Some of the most silent stress we carry into old age doesn't come from what we do now, but from what we haven't yet released. In Buddhism, forgiveness is not about forgetting, nor is it about excusing the wrongs done to us. Instead, it's about recognizing that clinging to pain is its own form of suffering. The Buddha said, "Holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned." And for many aging hearts, those quiet burns, built up over years, become tension in the chest, tightness in the breath, and even disease in the body. Let's meet Harold, 82 years old, widowed, and known by his neighbors as a gentle soul. But Harold carried something inside for most of his life: resentment toward his brother, who had abandoned the family when they were young, leaving Harold to care for their aging parents alone. For over 50 years, that resentment pulsed quietly beneath every conversation, every lonely holiday, every doctor's visit made alone. But something changed the day Harold's granddaughter asked him, "What would you say to your brother now if you could?" Caught off guard, Harold didn't know. That night, he sat down with a piece of paper and began to write, not to send it, but just to speak the words aloud. At last, what began as bitterness softened, paragraph by paragraph, into something else. Not reconciliation, not absolution, but release. Forgiveness, in that moment, wasn't a gift to his brother. It was a balm to his own heart. His blood pressure, long elevated, began to stabilize. He slept better. He smiled more. And when he told his granddaughter about the letter, he said simply, "I finally stopped carrying him in my chest." This is the power of forgiveness in the Buddhist path. It is not a transaction. It is a liberation. And when practiced sincerely, even silently, it unknots the muscles, stills the racing thoughts, and allows the heart to beat, not with guarded caution, but with a quiet kind of freedom. It's important to know, forgiveness is not always immediate. It may take years. It may come and go. It may begin with forgiving ourselves for the ways we failed to live up to our own expectations, for the people we hurt unknowingly, for the weight of being human. The Buddha reminded us, "You yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection." And what does that mean practically for an older adult sitting at a kitchen table, staring into memory? It means writing that letter, even if it's never sent. It means whispering, "I forgive you," into the silence, even if no one else hears. It means saying, "I did the best I could," and meaning it. It means letting the heart finally exhale. Forgiveness is not a moral checkbox. It is heart medicine. And in a life that has known both sweetness and sorrow, few things heal more deeply than choosing, at long last, to put the burden down. Next, we'll turn to the wisdom of Buddhist impermanence and how learning to embrace life's passing seasons can help the heart open rather than close as time moves forward. 5. Impermanence and the heart's freedom. Letting go with grace. There is a moment, often quiet and unannounced, when an aging heart recognizes a truth it once tried to avoid, that everything, no matter how deeply cherished, is destined to change. Loved ones drift away, health becomes more fragile, roles we once held dissolve like morning fog. And yet within this sobering realization lies one of the most liberating teachings the Buddha ever offered: the truth of impermanence. All conditioned things are impermanent. When one sees this with wisdom, one turns away from suffering. This ancient line, repeated for generations, is not meant to bring sadness, but serenity. It reminds us that loss is not a punishment. Change is not a betrayal. They are simply the rhythm of life itself, a rhythm the heart can learn to move with, rather than against. Many older adults speak of the grief of fading relevance, when the phone rings less often, when friends pass one by one, when the mirror reflects not just lines, but years of story. And yet, in Buddhist thought, aging is not seen as a withering, but as a ripening. Just as fruit sweetens before falling, so too can the heart deepen, if we are willing to stop clutching and start allowing. Take Eleanor, a 76-year-old once known for hosting vibrant dinners filled with laughter and conversation. When her husband passed and her adult children moved away, the house became quieter, painfully so. For a time, she resisted the silence. She turned on the TV, filled her calendar with errands, anything to drown out the sound of absence. But one morning, while tending to the garden her husband once planted, she paused. The tomatoes were gone, the basil wilted, and yet the soil remained. She sat on the porch and simply watched the wind move through the trees. That was the moment it changed. She told a friend later, "I stopped wishing for what was and started honoring what is." This is what impermanence offers us when we lean in, rather than lean away. It tells us that just as the seasons turn, so too does our life, and there is beauty in each stage. The sorrow you feel now may one day soften into gratitude. The aches in your body may teach you to move more gently. The empty rooms may become places of reflection, not regret. But embracing impermanence doesn't mean becoming passive. It means choosing to participate fully in the moment, even as you know it won't last. It's the smile you give a stranger, the story you share with a grandchild, the forgiveness you finally allow yourself. It's lighting a candle not to banish the dark forever, but simply to bring warmth for as long as the flame lasts. The heart that learns impermanence does not become cold, it becomes clear. It learns not to hoard love, but to offer it freely. It stops trying to freeze time and starts dancing with it. And so in the final season of life, the question is not, how can I hold on, but rather, how can I let go beautifully? Coming up next is the closing reflection, where we'll weave these truths together into a gentle but powerful parting message for the heart. Shall I continue? By now, dear listener, perhaps you're feeling something stir, not just in your thoughts, but in your chest. A soft loosening, a quiet breath, a recognition that your aging heart, with all its years, its scars, its rhythms and rests, is not broken, it's awakening. You've walked with us through truths both tender and bold, that the heart slows not in defeat, but in wisdom. That rest is not weakness, but renewal. That your emotions, far from being burdens, are signs that you are alive and still loving. You've heard how joy need not be loud to be real, how grief can hollow us out, only to make room for even more compassion, and how impermanence, that universal current that touches all things, is not your enemy. It's your invitation to stop clinging and start cherishing. So what does it mean truly when we say that aging hearts beat differently? It means they beat with memory, with humility, with grace. They carry songs only time can compose, lullabies of goodbye, anthems of endurance, whispers of hope that rise again each morning with the sun. An aging heart may skip a beat now and then, but it still knows how to love, perhaps more wisely than ever before. You see, Buddhist wisdom doesn't tell us to escape life or hide from change. It teaches us to turn toward it, to sit gently with the ache, to breathe through the fear, to smile even as we let go, not because we don't feel, but because we do. Because we've lived long enough to know that even the heaviest sorrow passes, and even the smallest joy matters. So if your heart has been tired lately, if the world has felt too fast, too loud, too full of should-have-beens. Take this moment to simply be. You've earned it. You're not running out of time. You're arriving at a new kind of peace. And before we close, let me leave you with this. You are not your diagnosis. You are not your wrinkles. You are not what's fading. You are what remains, what deepens, what shines quietly in the soft light of wisdom. May you care for your heart, not just with medicine, but with meaning. May you walk slowly, breathe deeply, love gently, and live the years ahead with a presence more profound than ever before. If today's message found a place in your heart, I invite you to leave a comment. Your reflections are a gift, not only to us, but to others who may need them. And if you'd like to continue this journey into mindful, meaningful living, grounded in Buddhist wisdom for the later chapters of life, please consider subscribing to our channel. Just click the subscribe button and turn on the bell so you don't miss any of the teachings we share. Until next time, may your heart be soft, steady, and beautifully free. Namaste.